Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde, and thank you for joining today. This presentation is our coach development update for March 2026. Aujourd'hui, je parle premièrement en anglais, mais si vous en avez des questions, posez des questions par un courriel en français et nous allons te répondre au suite de possible. So today I'll be walking through updates about coach education, course delivery, evaluation processes, and upcoming changes and initiatives that Boxing Canada has planned. We'll also be reviewing some planned programming and future requirements for coaches involved in national competitions. So before we begin, I just want to review a couple of key acronyms and terms that come up again and again throughout the presentation. The first is PTSO, and that's our provincial or territorial sport organization. This would be examples like Boxing PEI or Boxing BC or the FQB. A PTCR comes up every now and then, and that's a provincial or territorial coaching representative. And those are organizations that run coach development within a particular province, but are not specific to one sport. So an example of that would be in Ontario is the Coaches Association of Ontario. And sometimes it's an independent coaching organization, and sometimes it's a multi-sport organization that does other things as well. So for instance, in British Columbia, we'd be talking about Via Sport. And in Nova Scotia, it would be the Sport Nova Scotia. The next term is NSO, and that's National Sport Organization. So Boxing Canada is a national sport organization. And then there would be other national sport organizations like Swim Canada, Rugby Canada, Dive Canada. And then CAC, Coaching Association of Canada. And then there'll be other terms that we use from time to time, like learning facilitators, NCCP, which is the National Coaching Certification Program. And these are sort of more coaching specific terms, but they are universal across all sports, or they're hopefully supposed to be. Now, the Coaches Association of Canada and the NCCP exist to provide national standards for coach education. And one of the primary goals is inter-sport operability. So you can do an educational unit in one sport or for one sport that you're coaching in, but you can use that information if you ever want to take a coach education for another sport. So for instance, a great example of this would be the sport nutrition online e-learning module. So it is not specific to any specific sport, but it is used as a component in many, many sports education programming. And then one other important thing to understand about the NCCP is that they have this concept of coaches are in training, and then they become trained, and then they become certified. And anytime a coach takes a sport-specific coaching course, they become in training for that level of the coaching program. So for instance, the first time I take boxing instruction beginner course, I would immediately become in training at that level. Then to become trained, I need to have completed that boxing specific course. And then I also would have needed to complete the 3 multi-sport courses that are also associated with that. And then ultimately you want to become certified. And in order to be certified, you need to be complete all of your training. So you are a trained status. And then you become, or you are evaluated by an evaluator who ideally is not the same person who did your training. And with that outside oversight, the NCCP and Coaches Association of Canada has a strong understanding that you've been evaluated by someone who isn't necessarily invested in your ability to pay for a course and then feel like you got something out of it. So it gives us some control over the outcome and makes sure that we have an opportunity to see that the knowledge and the practical competency that a coach has is reflective of the type of education that they've got. when we look at the programs offered through Boxing Canada, really we've got three main coach courses. And the first is our instruction beginner. Then we get into our competitive levels, which is our introduction to competition, and then our competition development. And then there is a higher level called the advanced coaching diploma. And the advanced coaching diploma is really focused on coaches who are working as coaches full time. And the ACD available through your province is not a boxing specific course. It is a course that you take with other coaches from other sports. And there's a lot of learning about not sort of boxing specific information, but information that is really focused on making you the best possible coach you can possibly be. And it's focused a lot on biomechanics, science, psychology, understanding the socio and demographic values that Canadians have and how we can use those values in order to help our athletes become successful, particularly in the high performance coach or sport context. And a few critical issues that we need to keep in mind with regard to Boxing Canada and how we deliver the programming. So really all participants in a coaching program should be members of Boxing Canada or of course, their provincial association. The reason for this it really comes down to risk management, right? So once an individual is a member of their provincial boxing association and affiliated then through Boxing Canada, we have a bunch of policies that kick in that govern the behaviors and the opportunities that individual has. Things like our code of conduct, things like our grievance policies, things like making sure we have barrier-free access for people of minorities and different genders. If they're not members, they're not covered under these policies, and we could potentially negatively impact on the experience that a coach has who is a member by allowing in individuals who aren't members. So that really is important. Another thing is we really like when courses are widely advertised. We don't really like hearing that a course has been offered to just a single individual or just to a single club. The reality is we have more coaches who are seeking education than we have opportunities most of the time. And if we have the opportunity for someone to get into a course, get educated, and feel more confident and more connected to the sport because they were able to be a coach who's received some education, that's a net positive for everyone. So we really like hearing that courses are advertised out to certainly to our members, but also maybe across provincial or across club barriers, right? There's no reason why we can't share in these opportunities when they come up. Now, learning facilitators can, of course, run their own courses, and we encourage that to happen. But we also really like when the PSOs, the Provincial Sport Organization for Boxing, is really involved in trying to determine, hey, where do we need some more courses happening? It is very easy for someone who is interested in becoming a coach to contact their PSO, put their name on a waiting list, and then when the PSO gets enough interest, oh, okay, we've got a whole lot of people, around Trois-Rivières who are really interested in having a course. Okay, we can make sure that one happens there. Um, and we certainly encourage organizations that have a group of potential coaches who would like to get educated to bring forward that request up to the PSO. So for instance, if I've got a whole bunch of coaches in, say, like Swift Current, and I've got 6 people, I call up my provincial boxing organization and say, hey, I've got 6 people right here. Is there any way we can put a course on for us? And very often that will be enough people that, okay, yep, we can send a learning facilitator up. Here's about how much it's going to cost everyone. And let's get this thing going, right? Because we don't want to have people who are interested in coaching waiting and waiting and waiting for opportunities to actually move on that ambition. We also encourage a lot of innovation in course delivery. So you can do sort of an entire day for our instruction beginner. You can do an entire weekend for our competition introduction program. But there are other ways that we can deliver these. So it could be that maybe we do 2 hours every week for a number of weeks. It could be that we break things up into 2 weekends. It could be that we've got some hybrid learning going on where some of the course is done in advance through like a Zoom meeting. And then once everyone is together, we can focus on just the boxing specific stuff where we need to, be in contact with each other in a boxing gym. So if there are opportunities that you can think of or learning facilitators can think of to do something a little more innovative in what we're offering, I encourage everyone to experiment. And if you have any questions about whether you think your experiment might be viable or not, certainly contact us at the office. One other area that we're really interested in is if you are able to be a learning facilitator and help teach a course in a different language. Of course, we've got lots of French and English speakers in Canada, but of course, we speak a lot of other languages too. And if you are able to run a bilingual course, say in Spanish and English, or French and German, or some other language, this could be a real benefit to us because there are some coaches, particularly I'll say, maybe a little older, who've just come into Canada, where English or French may not be a language that they are comfortable using in the boxing gym. So we keep that in mind. Okay, looking at who we actually have across the country doing learning facilitation and evaluation. A number of our provinces have sort of one or two people who are running courses. That's great. We can always use a few more. And certainly when it comes to evaluation, we like having the option for evaluation to happen in person, but the vast majority of evaluations that we do happen remote. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But really what we're looking for is to have a minimum number of individuals who are available in each province, right? So certainly having at least one learning facilitator and at least one evaluator in each province is something that we are aiming for. And in order to become a learning facilitator evaluator, there is a process, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So if you're a current learning facilitator and you want to become an evaluator, it's pretty simple. There's a training that you need to do through your PTCR, and it goes over sort of, what is the NCCP, what's the certification process, how to debrief coaches appropriately, and then how to, put together a plan for how you're actually going to do your evaluations. There is some content specific training that happens, and that's with Boxing Canada, but it is fairly tight. It's really about reviewing the tools that we have and making sure that the documentation is correct, that all the learning facilitators and evaluators have. And then we're ready to do a co-delivery or a co-evaluation experience in order to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with sort of what steps we need to go through. And speaking of those steps, when we look at the process that coaches are using to become instruction beginners, we sort of outline it here, and it you can see sort of quite clearly defines this in training and trained and certified status. It really is important that we go through in this order. It makes things much easier, frankly, because we need to have sort of this basic understanding of what being a boxing coach is, and we learn that sort of in the gym in our own Boxing Canada workshop. And then we layer on the information from the NCCP multi-sport modules, the make ethical decisions, making headway, planning a practice, nutrition, and emergency action planning. And then what we do in the evaluation is we bring together what we learned in the workshop and we line that up with a lot of the more theoretical structures that you learn about in the NCCP modules. And we just make sure that that coach can demonstrate a reasonable level of competency. We're not looking to trick anyone. We're not looking to make everyone have a bad time during the evaluation process, but it is an important step that we all need to get through. And it's important that when coaches go through their initial training in their actual workshop for a particular level, that they understand that there are other things that they are going to need to do that are not boxing specific. And it's important that they understand that, hey, you just go to the CAC, they'll give you some guidance as to where to find these other courses. When we look at our competition introduction level, very similar. Of course, the workshop that we run through Boxing Canada is slightly longer, and trying to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of competition preparation. And then once you're finished that workshop, of course, then you need to go on and do your required NCCP modules. And again, if you haven't, you would have done it before, but the make ethical decisions super important. And then we get into a little bit more about like how coaches operate and what is it that we're trying to do and what tools do we need universally in order to do it through the teaching and learning, how to plan a practice, basic mental skills, nutrition, and design a basic sport program. And of course, then the evaluation is on top of that. And the evaluation at this level is really focused on preparation of an athlete for their first competition. And that's not to say that it is all sort of low-level coaching. It goes up quite high. But as you all know, within the boxing community, a first competition is a big deal, right? Being in the ring for the first time, actually going full force against another competitor is an intimidating prospect. And it's exciting, but it can be intimidating. We want to make sure that our athletes are ready and that the preparation that coaches have given them is going to be adequate for them to have a positive experience, regardless of what the outcome of their actual bout is. And then at a comp dev level, of course, you just see it, you see the content growing and growing and growing, right? So you need to have completed all of our NCCP modules that are boxing specific, and these are available online for everyone to do. And then, of course, there's a ton of NCCP modules that need to be done. And you can see just by the titles, like coaching and leading effectively, managing conflict, psychology of performance. So you can see how we're getting into a more high performance context with this course. And then the evaluation is, similarly advanced, right? So you need to demonstrate that you can make ethical decisions. We talk about how to manage conflict in real world situations. We talk about leading drug-free sport, because certainly that's important. And then there's a variety of portfolio elements that you need to provide. And we need to observe the coach in training and in competition in order to really be able to check off that they're able to demonstrate the level of competency that we're looking for. So looking at specifically at the evaluation process. So for instruction beginner and competition introduction, we have as I said before, the vast majority of people are doing remote evaluations. So you can do them in person, but the vast majority are done at a distance. And in order to start that process off, you go to our online store, you click on getting an evaluation, and then once you've paid your $180, you are then assigned an evaluator, and that evaluator gets in touch with you. They give you a full rundown of everything that you're going to need to do for the evaluation. And then there's a dialogue back and forth. So you submit an exercise. There tend to be a few written exercises and then a lot of sending along videos. And then the evaluator will debrief you on how you've done in those. They'll highlight, hey, I think this was done really well. This was done really well. Have you ever thought about maybe doing this a little differently? Or what do you think would happen if you delivered, this skill or this warm up or this component of your training in a slightly different way, right? And we try to challenge the coach. We're not trying to, we're not trying to stop people from getting evaluated successfully or get their certification. What we're trying to do is make sure that they're able to use some of the skills that we taught them during the course and during the multi-sport courses and be able to demonstrate that they have a strong understanding of that material, and that they're going to act in a manner that is in accordance with the principles of the National Coach Certification Program and, frankly, with Boxing Canada. Similarly, in-person evaluations, we can obviously do the exact same thing. The evaluation process is the same, or the steps that you go through are the same, just the methodology is a little different. Obviously, having an evaluator come directly into the club in order to watch you coach for an evening has some advantages to it. So it is an option that's there, but we do, like I said, with 95+% of the coaches who are evaluated through the remote process. And one of the reasons why we really like that remote process, beyond the fact that it's quite convenient, and you can send in videos, you could do a live Zoom call, there's all sorts of ways that we can get this stuff done. But the evaluators who we use for those remotes are all former or current national team athletes. And the money that you're spending on your evaluation is going directly into the time that they're spending with you. So it's a way for us to be able to employ, frankly, our top boxers in Canada and get them thinking a little bit more about coaching as a skill as opposed to the idea of just being coached. So they've all been educated on how to do evaluations properly by the Coaches Association, and we're really hoping that this will turn in the long run, once they're finished being an athlete, into those evaluators becoming really strong coaches out working in our clubs and in our provinces. In both the cases of the remote and in-person evaluations, once the evaluation is complete, of course, we update the locker, and then we send out an updated coaching card for that coach, and we send it directly to them because, of course, we want them to be able to show off that they've been able to become certified at whatever level it is that they're engaged with. So a few little statistics that we've got here. What we're looking at is for both instruction beginner and for competition introduction, the number of evaluation requests that we get, and then how many people are complete in their evaluations at any given time. And the number continues to go up fairly steadily. However, I will say that the number of complete evaluations has actually kind of flatlined in the last 3 or 4 months, and that's not great. We would like to see those numbers going up, and we're engaged with trying to email and cold call some of these coaches who've paid for their evaluations, but yet aren't sending us anything in. And if there's something we can do in order to make that easier, then we would like to. For the vast majority of people seeking evaluations, they're able to do all the evaluation tasks in one evening. It is not a terribly laborious process to go through. But the delay seems to be really waiting for coaches to just submit their required tasks or materials. So something to know. We are looking at the possibility of saying, look, you need to get this done in a month, or we're gonna cut you off, right? Like, or at that point we'll refund your money, because we really we would really like to get this thing going. And we know that the coaches did too. If a coach is willing to put $180 on the line, it's pretty obvious that they would like to get going with the process. So hopefully we'll see those completion numbers increase in the next couple months. Now, looking at our comp dev program, so this is the higher level program available through us. We've shifted all of the online education directly into the locker. So once a coach is competition introduction certified, then they will automatically get the opportunity to start working on the competition development program. And the online components of comp dev through the locker are divided into 3 series of education units, and each series costs $50 to engage with, and it covers off the demands of competitive boxing, techniques and tactics and skills, mental and athletic abilities, and what are the differences and similarities between those, updates on the judging and scoring systems, and then performance analysis looking through a biomechanical lens. It is very important that these get done. And while it is an e-learning module, some of the concepts can be quite intricate and complex. And we recommend that everyone takes as much time as they can trying to absorb that information as possible, because when you get into the multi-sport courses that are also required for this level, they make reference to a lot of the concepts that are brought up in the boxing specific content. So if you've skipped through that, you could really be up a creek when you go in and do your multi-sport courses. So just a heads up for everyone there. And that was quite a long slide. We didn't have time to or space to get it all French and English on the same slide. So just pause for a second for people to take a read through who might need it. And then looking at what we're trying to do on an annual cycle for coach development. So we like to have at least one learning facilitator or evaluator in each province. So if your province or territory is lower than that, or you would just like to be involved in one of those capacities, please let us know, because we will put some effort into getting you ready and up to snuff. We are attempting to run at least 2 competition development performance analysis courses per year, because there's sort of the course component in the evaluation process, and it's all sort of tied in together. We've been playing around with how we're delivering these, and we found that the best method that we can find is over, say, 5 weeks, we do once a week a 2-hour session, and then there's an evaluation period after that. We found that that's worked really well. If we have a request from a particular area of the country, and I know, like, for example, Quebec and Ontario have both come to us and said, hey, we've got a ton of people who are interested in doing this. They've all signed up and sort of a ready list. Can we put one on? And the answer is absolutely. We would love to. We don't want anyone to have to wait around for sort of a once or twice per year opportunity if we have the ability to just put something on. So let us know and we can do that. The other thing that we're attempting to do is put on coach education sessions at our nationally sanctioned tournaments. And for instance, next week, actually, we've got our U23, U19, U17 nationals at the Canada Cup. So during one of those mornings, there will be a coach education session. And as it turns out, it will also be our, monthly high performance update meeting, because there's a whole bunch of changes in the high performance program that we need to let everyone know about. And we're going to call that our coach education for the month. So it will be available, and anyone who properly signs up for that, we will assign them some continuing education credits as reward for sitting in and listening to me drown on about high performance. Now, for 2026, we've got a few new initiatives that we're looking at, and one is an update to our competition introduction content, and we've been working on this. And we try to update content as often as we can, but it is a bit of a process. But competition introduction is sort of due. We made a lot of updates to our instruction beginner over the last 2 years, and it's now CI's turn. Another initiative that we're looking at is converting parts of both our instruction beginner and competition introduction live workshops into an e-learning format. So what we hope to be able to do is, instead of, say, coming in for 16 hours of content in a weekend, we might be able to take 4 or 5 hours of that and put that into a self-guided e-learning that participants would need to do before they show up into the boxing gym. And that way, when we're in the boxing gym, we can focus more on the actual boxing side as opposed to some of the more theoretical elements. And we've had certainly learning facilitators, but also coach participants asking if there's a way that we can do this, because spending a whole weekend in a boxing gym taking a course is time that you're not actually coaching, right? So if there's some way that we can, right size this a little bit and increase flexibility, then we're gonna take a look at what we can do. And we've got a lot of support from the Coaches Association to look at how we might be able to do this update. I'll also say we're also looking at a new course, brand new, that really is for coaches who aren't actually coaching. They're more like instructing a program. So if they're doing an after school program for, 8 to 12-year-olds, or they're doing the pre-competitive, boxing class that runs every week for 12 weeks, on Saturday mornings at the gym. Having a leader to run that program as you know, if you've been to a boxing gym, you don't need to be a high performance coach in order to do that. You need someone who understands how to be safe in the gym. You need someone who is responsible and understands that there is a duty of care that they have for the participants in their program. And you need someone who can demonstrate, not just talk about, but actually do proper technique for punches and defenses and movement around the gym. So we're looking at designing a course that would be quite short, like maybe 4 or 5 hours, that really focuses on that only. So it wouldn't really be a coaching course. It's really more of an instruction course. But, for a teenager, 16, 17 years old who's looking to pick up some hours at the boxing club and run, a program for U12s, then this is the type of thing that we would like to start them off with instead of the more complex coaching courses where you also need to do the multi-sport and you also need to be evaluated. There would be no evaluation for this. This would just be a course that you can just go through, and we'll have all that curriculum ready to go. There have also been some requests for other changes. So one of the requests that we're really interested in is a course that is not really about coaching, but it's more about how to run a successful club. And, just because you're the best coach in the world doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful running a boxing club. There's a whole lot of things that you need to worry about, like administration and risk management and, business considerations, advertising, partnerships, right? Where do I find participants? How do I hold on to participants? How do I even register people, right? Other than them just walking in and, I don't know, handing over some cash. Like there's a risk to operating that way. So we're trying to put together a course that is not, part of the step-by-step how to become a coach and coach at higher levels. It's a little different. It's how do we run a successful boxing club? And it could be good for people who are already running a club. It could be good for people who are working in a club and who are looking at converting to a management role within that club. Or it could be good for someone who doesn't have a club but is thinking, you know what, I might be interested in running a boxing club. I wonder what it is that I need to know in order to be successful. So we're looking at putting that together, understanding that we really have three types of clubs within Canada, right? We've got our full charitable clubs that are, doing essentially community outreach and social work within their communities. We've also got strictly high performance clubs that are only focused on competitive athletes, and that's it. And then we've got full service clubs, who are trying to provide, a boxing related experience for participants, all the way down to 5, 6 years old and all the way up into their 80s and 90s and whatever. And trying to find a program for every single person within that range and trying to run it out of the club, right? And really have, a large club that is, gives a sense of feeling of community, not just about performance or not just about, after school programs getting kids so they're, not running around doing God knows what outside. So we're looking at that. And then we're also looking at the potential of a new evaluation pathway for the instruction beginner course. And right now we've got, this remote option and we've got an in-person option, but we're working really hard with the Coaches Association to see if there's a way that we can, um, for lack of a better term, tick off the boxes required by the Coaches Association of Canada and the NCCP to say, we've evaluated this individual, they've demonstrated that they have enough skill and enough competency, and can we do that evaluation through kind of an online quiz, right? It'll be a fairly involved, I think, online quiz, but it'll be, some straight up multiple choice questions, some, sort of arrange things into an order, grouping different ideas, and probably watching some videos that show, a situation unfolding within a boxing warm up or a boxing um, class or at the end of class, and leading our coaches who are being evaluated through a set of questions where they're able to demonstrate that, what, we know something about, say, sport. We know something about the developmental considerations of, of 12 to 15-year-old learners. Knowing that, we should have the warm up before the main activity of the practice and not, just do cool down after, but, we went from, just putting our wraps on to all of a sudden going out, 100% on a bag for 3 minutes, right? Like, obviously that's not something we would want to be doing. So we're going to see if we can do that, because if we can reduce the barriers to coaches becoming evaluated, we want to do it. So, if an evaluation is available that you can do 24 hours a day from your home, from your computer or from your iPad or even from your phone, that could be a real game changer. And commensurate with that, maybe we can drop that barrier or the potential barrier of $180 for the evaluation as well. I think that would really be nice if we could find a way to automate the processes a little bit so that we can drop that down. Because anything we can do in order to get more coaches certified, I think is positive for the program overall. So, and then of course, if we've got comp dev evaluation opportunities at major events or major camps, we're going to try to line those up. I will say it is, as someone who's done that and tried to do that at a number of national championships, it's not always easy. And I think we're going to be relying more on some of the national camps, like our U23 camp each fall, and on our U19, U17 camp in January, that we run at the national level in order to have coaches who've come in who are engaged with their comp development education be able to do their evaluation while at the camp. I think there's less stress at that point. There's ways that we can go about it. And we can use things like the sparring that goes on during those camps as a fill-in for some of the competitive elements that we need to be evaluating. So we are looking at that. Okay, and looking at our national standards for coach education, we are levering these up a little bit, every year. And I want to make sure everyone has a good understanding that by 2028, for nationally sanctioned competitions like our national championships or the Canada Cup, we do not want to have inadequately educated and certified coaches attending. And where we think the right level as a minimum standard is to be at the nationals for 2028 is to be certified as a competition introduction coach. Right now, we're sort of playing a little bit with this instruction beginner level, and this it was a little bit lower standard last year. It's moved up a little bit this year for 2026 and 2027. We're going to bump it up even a little bit more. So if you're skating by right now on being an instruction beginner certified coach, like you right now, you need to have another higher level coach sort of with you, or quote supervising you, even though it's not really supervision, but with you. Let's get working on it. Let's get your certification in competition introduction complete, because we would really, really like to be able to bump that up. And this would take us sort of to being at the properly high level of coach education that is seen across the best sports within Canada. Not all sports. We are ahead of a number of sports, but we don't want to just be sort of mid-pack on this. I think we really would like our coach education to be something we're proud of, something that we are willing to show off a little bit, and something that can help sell our sport as opposed to other sports. So it's a heads up that by 2028, we're really hoping to get there. Okay, and wrapping up, so we do these meetings or these updates sort of every 3 months, and I may actually be off by a month on where I just put in the slides. But we do these recordings, and we have this information available for anyone to sort of look at at a later time. We also keep all the slide decks available for you to take a look at, so please don't hesitate. I'm not sure that it's riveting information if you go back in time, but if you're ever looking for answers on things, this is one of the ways you can find it. And if you've got people who have questions about the coach education system, certainly send them over to watch this video or just listen to the video through in the background, and hopefully they'll be able to find some answers. And of course, if you need other answers, Boxing Canada, of course, online, we have a whole coaching section on the website. And if you have any questions, we've got Andréane Parent, who sort of looks and takes care of the majority of the coaching program for Boxing Canada. She's available at her email there. And we have a general coach at boxingcanada.org email address. So please feel free to contact us there as well. Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing everyone at Nationals.